In Lesson 1, we're going to learn about database terminology. You'll learn what a database is, and you'll learn about the parts of an Access database, including tables, queries, forms, and reports. Before we get started working with Access today, let's go over some basic database terminology. A computer database is a program that lets you store, organize, and manipulate data. Databases are great for storing large amounts of information. You can use a database to organize that information, generate different reports and queries. And you can use a database to manipulate the data, make changes to it. In the days before computers, data would be stored on paper, usually in a ledger book or on index cards. For example, to keep track of your customers, you could make a series of index cards with one customer per card. You'd have a separate drawer of cards for the products that you sold or the suppliers that you did business with. However, as efficient as this may have seemed at the time, it was very time-consuming to sort the cards or to search through a large drawer of cards for some bit of data. When computers first came along, the earliest databases were really nothing more than glorified text documents. They were great at storing information, and they certainly made searching and sorting data easier. However, they lacked many features we take for granted today, such as the ability to recognize relationships between different types of data. For example, you could have your list of customers with some basic details, but if you want to look up information on those customers' purchases, you would have to look in another file. The earliest databases had no way to relate this information together. This creates many problems, including having multiple copies of the same information in different places. Updating all of that information can be a nightmare. Fortunately, Microsoft Access does recognize relationships, and that's one of its strong points, but much more on that later. The next logical progression was for people to store all of their data in Excel spreadsheets. Now, Excel is a great tool for storing small amounts of information and for analyzing data, but when it comes to large amounts of information, using Excel can be cumbersome. If you've got more than a few thousand rows of data, you really should be using a database program like Microsoft Access. Plus, Excel has the same problem that early databases did. It's not relational. There's no easy way to link your customers to their orders or products to their suppliers, and so on. In addition, Excel can be difficult for novice users to work with. If you don't know how to use Excel, finding the information that you want can sometimes be daunting. Whereas with Access, you can build a nice user-friendly interface for beginners to easily find their way around in. Plus, it's much easier to secure an Access database than an Excel spreadsheet. You can control exactly what users can do in your database and what information they have access to. This brings us, finally, to the modern database. In my opinion, Microsoft Access is the best desktop database application available. An Access database can store large amounts of data, much more than an Excel spreadsheet or a simple text document. An Access database can recognize relationships between your data. For example, if you're keeping track of customers and their orders, you can store all of your customer details in one place and all of their order information in another place. Access can then relate the two together, so you don't need lots of redundant information in your database, such as having to copy all of your customer details onto each order. The database can keep track of that for you automatically. One of the problems with Excel spreadsheets and older database applications is that you have little or no control over what kinds of information get put into your database. With Access, you can specify exactly what the user can do. This will prevent, for example, a number where the customer's last name should be, or a 4-digit phone number. Access gives you strict controls over the structure of your data, and that's a great thing. Access is great for you to build a database for other people to work with. You can design a very user-friendly interface so they don't get lost. All of the data entry forms and reports that they need to work with can be presented for them in a nice, simple menu. Plus, since you, the developer, control the interface, you can easily secure your database and lock them out of sections they shouldn't see. Sure, there's a little bit of a learning curve to initially set your database up, but once it's built, you will definitely save time. Now that we know what a database is and what the benefits of using a database are, let's talk about the parts of a Microsoft Access database. An Access database consists of data and the tools to work with that data. What are these tools? An Access database consists of tables, queries, forms, reports, and optionally, macros and modules. Tables are used to store data, queries to organize data, forms to display data on the screen, reports to print out the data, and for advanced users, you can build macros to automate repetitive tasks, and modules, which give you the full Visual Basic programming language inside your Access databases. Now I have macros and modules grayed out because you can build a fantastic database in Access without ever using them. All you really need are tables, queries, forms, and reports. All data in your Access database is stored in one or more tables. You can think of a table like a single Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. However, tables give you much more control over the types of data that can be input into them. For example, here you can see part of a customer table. Tables are made up of a collection of fields. Each field holds a specific type of data. For example, here I have highlighted the last name field in red. This field should only store the customer's last name and nothing else. In fact, you can specify rules in the table to force fields to only contain certain types of information, like text, numbers, dates, or currency values. Fields are also sometimes referred to as columns, just like in an Excel spreadsheet. All of the data concerning one item is stored in a record. Each record consists of every field of data for that item. In this customer table, for example, each record represents one customer. Here, I have highlighted one customer, Alan Watson, in red. You can think of a record like a row in an Excel spreadsheet. You might not always be storing customers, however. In a product table, each record would represent one product. In an order table, each record would represent one order. In a timesheet table, for example, each record might represent one instance of an employee clocking in or out. So your tables can store many different types of data: people, places, events, and so on. Now, the data in your tables might not be stored in any particular order. You might have hundreds of thousands of records in your table, and the boss comes up to you and says, "I only want to see a list of customers from New York sorted by last name." That's what a query is used for. A query is normally used to display data in different ways. You can sort your data or apply criteria to only view specific types of data. Queries can be saved and used later, so you don't have to keep redesigning them. Queries can also be used to modify data, add, delete, or even edit records. We'll learn more about those types of queries in our expert classes. Forms allow you to build a nice, user-friendly environment to work with your data on the screen. Whether you're building a database just for yourself or for other people to work with, forms are a major time saver. You can display information however you want in a form. You can include just the types of data that you want your users to work with. You can combine information from multiple tables, such as displaying a summary of a customer's orders right on the customer screen. You can secure your fields so that users can only modify specific data. You can display calculations on your forms, such as the number of days an employee has missed work. Your forms can also contain drop-down lists so users can select from a list of data. Command buttons allow us to perform tasks such as opening other forms. In fact, you can turn a form into a main menu for other forms. The benefits for working with forms go on and on, but essentially, you'll build the interface with which your users will work with the database out of your forms. You never want other users to have to work directly with your tables and queries. You'll see why in upcoming classes. Reports are specifically designed to present data to people who are not using your database. You can print a report out or send it to someone as an email attachment. You can use reports for customer information, invoices, product catalogs, mailing labels, charts, and lots more. Anything you want to present to someone else can be designed as a report. Finally, an Access database can contain macros and modules. These are more advanced topics that we'll cover in later classes. In a nutshell, macros are generally used to automate repetitive tasks or carry out simple actions. Modules contain Visual Basic programming code that can really take your database to a professional level. Again, you can build a great database without ever touching a macro or module, and we'll cover these in our advanced classes.